Hey folks, back with ancient cosmography. Um, so here I'm comparing my comparison of, my diagram of the Lascaux scene, my interpretation of the Lascaux scene, the famous scene at Lascaux, the shaft scene, with the mainstream interpretation. I mean, it could be that the most mainstream interpretation is just like, you know, nothing. It's just like, well, it's just a painting of stuff for some reason, because of psychology or because of whatever. But it is fairly common for people to interpret, for scientists, for experts to interpret the famous scene as as a sky map. It's a 20,000-year-old painting in France, cave painting, but they interpret it as a sky map based on relatively little. I think it seems like. And that doesn't mean it's not a sky map. It probably is a sky map, but I think it's even more an Earth map, because from my understanding, all ancient maps were sky maps and Earth maps, and even modern maps are sky maps and Earth maps, or else they wouldn't demarcate the Tropic of Capricorn or the Tropic of Cancer on maps, or even the equator, because those things only have, those are based on celestial bodies. They're not terrestrial concepts, really. So anyway, I just find it interesting that my interpretation, which I sent to the woman in England who's supposedly the top expert of prehistoric maps, and she just rejected it out of hand as like, oh, you're wishful thinking, you're just imagining things, even though she's claimed that she's found a bunch of similar maps of similar antiquity. But she just rejected mine out of hand without even debating anything about it. Just said, no, that's not it. But meanwhile, a lot of the mainstream scientists say that it's a sky map based simply on these three dots, the eyes. Or, at least this was the top scholarly article I found online about it. And it's basing it on these three eyes. And I think maybe it's saying that they represent the stars of Cygnus, maybe. I should read the whole thing, but I think it's basically that these are celestial coordinates. So, and again, they might be right, but if that's valid, and if people are not going to mock this, which they shouldn't, and yet they're going to mock this, where I have, like these are straight arrows. So like I had to only have two, curved diagonal arrows in this. So just with straight up and down arrows of correspondence, commonalities. We have this one, here's Australia as the bison. Here's Papua as the Birdman, with Bird's Head Peninsula as his head, Bird's Beak Peninsula as his beak, Bird's Neck Isthmus as his neck. And then here you have Sulawesi as the front feet of this critter. You have the Philippines as his body. And you have Taiwan as his back foot. So all these are just directly, and then there's these other things, Palawan and Busawanga here, which are rearranged. and the Lesser Sunda Islands, which are very slightly rearranged. So those are like, those are the things I could easily point an arrow at without, destroying the picture. But if I could really put an arrow between every commonality, between this front haunch and Cape York Peninsula, between this shape here and this shape at the back there, between Torilla Peninsula, Warganborough, and Camp Curtis Island, and right here, and this, between the Great Barrier Reef and this hair, between Van Diemen Gulf and this, him bleeding out here, between the spear and the spear-shaped, Wessel Islands there. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if I literally put arrows between, for everything that's in common between all these, it would just be covered with arrows. You wouldn't even see anything. And yet, I'm laughed out of town by the so-called experts. But this is considered, solid data, because they have 3 things that they find that line up with something in the sky. I mean, it's pretty weird. I'm just saying, like, live in a stupid, stupid time, or at least in a stupid, stupid society. I'm tired of pretending otherwise. So yeah, here's just another one showing a bunch of the commonalities, that here's the tail, has these, seamounts and reefs here. Here's the spear as the Wessel Islands. Here's the front haunch as Cape York. Here's this other leg as forget what Mornington Island, I think. And then I think these back legs may be represented by these peninsulas like Dampier Peninsula and Cape Range. And then this island maybe as well as being this one. And, like if you just go on this, like what lines up? Okay, this Bird's Head Peninsula lines up. Bird's Beak Peninsula lines up. Bird's Neck Isthmus lines up with the Birdman's neck. Papua Peninsula lines up with his dick. New Britain lines up with his legs. Solomon Islands lines up, and New Ireland line up with his feet. So just in that, they've found 3 things that look like something in the sky, that match something in the sky. And I've found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. But, it's like the way a lot of people are is like, if you're not an expert, if the TV doesn't say so, if the school doesn't say so, then it's not real. It can't be real. So they will just ignore it. Even though if they look at it, it will make sense to them. But that's why they won't look at it, because they don't want to. They're like, oh no, this is making sense to me. I must be crazy like him. I must be, unorthodox and breaking all the rules like that guy. I don't want to do that. It's really pathetic. Anyway, so there you go. That's for those with pattern recognition. You can see that this is a much more conclusive, much more conclusive evidence than this is. And let's see, here's an ancient Hindu style map of the planet and the directions. I think they somehow do the directions diagonally, just like I think in the Aztec mandalas and whatever, showing the Earth similarly. But yeah, there's Mayan and Aztec things that look very, very much like this and have these guys in the corners and stuff representing the directions, maybe representing celestial bodies that are associated with those directions. It's the ancient Egyptian map of America from Hierakonpolis, 5,500 years old. All right, so I'm going to read some of this. Adaptive knowledge over their lifetime. Tribal elders in Australian Aboriginal societies are accorded a great deal of respect, with their knowledge, wisdom, and experience being essential for the growth and survival of their group. Critical information regarding seasonal food sources, intra- and intertribal political relationships, tool use, and manufacturing technology and secret business is incorporated into traditional song lines and carved, painted, or woven into artworks and tools. The symbolic and geometric patterns of Australian Aboriginal artworks often contain detailed information about matters of tribal interest to which casual or untrained observers may be completely oblivious. So yeah, that goes for basically all artworks of throughout history and prehistory. Most modern people have no idea that they have contained scientific information. When an Australian Aboriginal person needs to learn new information which is not part of the songline tradition, it is common to construct a story which incorporates aspects of the flora, fauna, and physical geography of the local area. Detailed information, including numerical, spatial, and temporal relationships about the subject areas, are built into the narrative, which is rehearsed frequently, allowing rapid and accurate recall of the information. These stories are personal, adaptable, and stuff. Okay, I don't know. Oops, I guess I'm going backwards. What is this? How many of these are there? All right, I'm going to read this, which is, I guess, before that. Sorry. Critical information of individual and group survival in the demanding Australian environment is relayed in stories, artistic expression, and artisanal crafts in a complex, multi-layered system. These constructs convey information to within-group observers at variable depths, levels of depth and complexity, depending on their education, experience, and status within the group. Each clan and nation has its own established stories which contain and transmit vital cultural knowledge, including Aboriginal law, personal rights and responsibilities, land use, astronomical and navigational information. These songline stories are ancient, exhibit little variation over long periods of time, and are carefully learned and guarded by the elders who are its custodians. Songlines and these cave paintings undoubtedly were accompanied by songlines. I mean, they clearly show stories. Like, this is the story. I mean, this is basically the exact story of Diarmid versus the boar in Gaelic lore, where they kill each other and they both lay down and die together next to each other with the spear and anyway. So I'm sure it had a song. I'm sure people dressed up as these guys and danced around and stuff. Or they probably did. Almost undoubtedly. Songlines can be expressed orally by dance, through paintings and petroglyphs, or a combination of all of these. I think usually often a combination of all of those. Using these methods, core cultural information is maintained and recalled without the need for a written alphabet, and an individual can acquire a vast store of adaptable and adaptive knowledge over their lifetime. Tribal elders in Australian Aboriginal societies are accorded a great deal of respect. Okay, so that goes to the other one. All right. Cool. So again, this explains it pretty well. These are the songline tracks that crisscross the whole of Australia. So if you can use a song to cross the outback, you can use the song to cross anything. And the Egyptians used them to cross the ocean. I think everybody used them to cross the ocean, but it's mostly, the Aborigines are some of the only people who still are in touch with their ancestors' traditions. Everybody else doesn't understand their own ancestors' traditions. There's another map showing all the different song lines crisscrossing the country that you can use to navigate. Let's see, what else we got here? Well, I guess I'll just get into some of this. The other world and the Antipodes. Talks about the knowledge about America and Europe before Columbus. Tiberius, the inhabitants of a world contrary with respect to our own, could very well be the bearers of far greater upset in terms of mentality and opinions, or at least the vehicle of a cultural estrangement that has always been a typical weapon of the diatribe and Menippean genre. So it's saying how they knew America was here, they knew about the Antipodes, but they used it often as a metaphor, so they often referred to it in symbolic terms. And Gulliver's Travels, kind of like that, where they make the Antipodes basically the opposite of the upper world. They make one hemisphere the opposite of the other, just because the people are quote unquote upside down there. As seen previously in Servius's testimony on Tiberianus's epistula, the Antipodes conceived to live below us, opposite our feet. So the Antipodes can mean the place or the people that live in that place. Hence, inferi with respect to. So inferi, inferior and inferno are the same word. People think inferno means fiery or hot. Actually, in Dante's Inferno, it's frozen. So it just shows how butchered language has become. Just means below. I mean, technically, your feet are your own inferno because they're below the rest of you. So what else we got here? These scientific theories with the information provided in the Bible. For example, the mention in Genesis of waters above was at times an obstacle to the acceptance of a spherical universe. So from Augustine on, we find the refusal of Christian authors to accept the existence of the Antipodes, at times accompanied by the negation of Earth's roundness. So basically he's saying the only people in history who ever claimed the Earth was flat were just theologians who did so for theological reasons. No scientist, no educated person who was not a theologian ever claimed the Earth was flat. It's just a fact. Basically, there might be some prankster or some idiot somewhere that did, but as far back as you go in history to 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, all educated people knew the Earth was a sphere. Until the Christians, and then 4chan. In Isidore of Seville, for example, we cannot believe in the existence of a populace called Antipode, because they are thought to be opposite ourselves and placed under the earth with their feet against ours, for neither the solidity nor the center of the earth will allow them. This proposition does not ensue from historical evidence, but from the affectations of poetic reasoning. So he's saying, no, there couldn't possibly be people on the other side of the earth, blah, 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 but, this is some Christian polemicists, so they don't have any interest in reality anyway. Besides these three parts of the world, there is a fourth across the ocean and in the south. This is unknown to us because of the heat of the sun. Legends place the inhabited Antipodes there. So the Antipodes of Europe is basically South America, even though it should be, like, there's nothing directly antipodal to most of Europe, but at least symbolically, South America is the Antipodes because it's the southwest hemisphere as opposed to the northeast hemisphere. The same will hold true for Bede, who, although presenting and discussing the doctrine of the zones as found in Pliny, then resorts to Isidore to confute it. Those zones rendered temperate by their nearness both to sun and ice are called the summer and winter zones, and both are said to be inhabitable, that is, capable of being inhabited, because they are not rendered unfit for mortals by extreme heat and cold. However, only one of them is known for sure to be inhabited. We must refuse to believe the legends about the Antipodes. So this is what they did before Columbus. They erased the knowledge about the people in the Antipodes. And the idea that someone has the historical or oral or visual evidence that people can cross through the fiery heat of Ethiopia and, leaving the northern sun behind them, find their temperate lands suited for mortals. Pliny, that relentless inquirer into the facts of nature, though not